You're listening to Home Sweet Home with Russ, McClellan, and friends. And here's Russ.
Hey, is Monica cool or what? Monica Bergman. You know, every once in a while you see people and you just, without them saying a word, you just see integrity. And that's the kind of, person that we're blessed to have, about 70 of them in our firm, and we're climbing each and every month, making a lot of adjustments. As always, sometimes it is a half step back to make those 2 steps forward, but that's the game, right? Never be stagnant. And now we have Sharon Crockett. How you doing, Sharon?
I'm doing well, Russ. Thank you.
Yeah, and in that context of what we were just talking about with not being stagnant, one of the things that I value immensely with prime lending is that, A, you know your stuff, right? B, you're honest, right? C, you make the call, all the things that you need to do normally. But in this crazy time of competitiveness where we don't have enough inventory relative to the amount of buyers that we have, we are often finding ourselves in multiple offer scenarios. And pressure to be put on us to, lower those contingencies or shorten those time frames. And what you guys have been doing at Prime Lending is really stepping up and helping communicate. Could you maybe explain to everyone what that has been looking like and how it's been helpful?
Yeah, Russ, there's no doubt that we're in a challenging market right now. The demand of inventory and the numbers of buyers that are needing and wanting homes, especially with the low interest rates, is just the gap is huge. So now more than ever, it's really key that we don't just get people pre-approved, but we actually strategize with them, giving them several different scenarios based on their purchase price point. So, for example, if they're looking at a home, in the 450 to 500 range, we educate them to be ready to go to the, 5 to 550 range, just depending on the neighborhood, the stats. We work very closely with the real estate agents in structuring what the offers look like as far as value. So now more than ever, it's very important to have those conversations. It's a very huge coaching moment, and not just looking at one type of loan, but if they're putting 20% down, maybe also talking about 5 or 10% down to have some extra money for appraisal issues if there's some gaps with value and price, to help people get into contract.
Yeah, really, we have to try to predict some of the challenges. And maybe we could just take an example. What I'm seeing with my real estate brokers is they're dealing with sellers. Let's say they're representing a buyer, and the seller has a hot property, which seems like all of them are hot properties. But especially between that $300,000 and $500,000 range, that's just a swarm of buyers, right, with these lower interest rates. And they'll often say, well, I want to shorten my financing time frame. And that's all well and good, meaning the financing contingency time frame. The challenge is that if we shorten it too much, it's just not realistic. And then all of a sudden in this appreciating or rapidly appreciating market, the seller may terminate the deal. Now, one of the things that I value and I think is very, very cool is that you're stepping up and sometimes having conversations with the listing agent in the transaction that bridges that communication gap between, what sounds good and maybe what's more important is what is predictable and what we can count on happening. So, have you found that you've been able to help bridge that gap of communication by calling listing agents on behalf of a borrower?
Yes, Russ. In fact, I would say 100% of every offer, we are having conversations with the listing agents, proactively reaching out, reassuring the agent and the seller that we are very engaged in this offer and that we are prepared to take care of their concerns. We talk about closing timeframes. I talk about how the appraisals are ordered at our company. And I'll tell you, not a lot of lenders are doing that. When I call, they'll say, wow, thanks so much for calling. I can't get anybody to call me back. And just the fact that you called me back, we were able to get 2 buyers into contract. One, because I knew the other listing agent well, and they knew how well we performed. And we weren't the highest. I think we were like 2,000 or 3,000 off, but they picked us because I called them. And then the other one, the agent was just we had such a good connection about strategy and market that they told their sellers how good of a conversation they had with the buyer's lender And, when appraisals and all that stuff starts coming down the line, they're going to want to be able to communicate with somebody about what's going on. So it is absolutely required that we do those conversations.
No, I can attest to the fact that there are very few people that make extra phone calls in the real estate lending world that I've seen in my career, right? There's like anything, there's good and bad. And what you guys are doing, and you said the word proactive, you're not being reactive, you're being proactive. And that would be a good thing for all of us to continue to do in a challenging, unbalanced market like we're currently in. What I tell my agents is, just because you get a deal mutual, if it's unrealistic or if you're not being straight up, then all that does is lead to, on the inside, disappointment, and on the outside, litigation, because there are unmet expectations. Outlining proactively how things work in the real world is so critical. And so I just want to commend you and acknowledge you and Michael for doing that and really caring about your clients, because anybody can print a piece of paper that says you're pre-qualified, subject to this and that and this and that and this and that. It doesn't mean much sometimes. But if you know where the source is coming from, like if you know Sharon and you know Michael, then you know that this pre-approval letter isn't just a piece of paper that somebody, did in Florida and sent you, via the email from XYZ company. And we don't know who any of these people are, right? So there is a certain element of integrity that comes from communication that is undeniable. And I just wanted to say thank you for that. And, and how you structure your offers too. You talked a little bit about how, with the cost of money being a vehicle for success right now, meaning it can be used as a strategic position where sometimes people get offended, like, I don't want to pay X price for that house. That's crazy. But I'll pay lower price, but I'll pay a higher rate, and in the long run I'll pay more. So sometimes it's this ego versus ego, right? Like, I'm going to take my ball and go home if I don't get this price. Where what I admire about you guys is you'll explain the cost of money and how maybe buying down points works, or how maybe if you don't buy now and pay a little more now, you might wait, and A, you might have more appreciation, so pay a higher price, and B, interest rates might climb.
Yeah, that's so huge, Russ. In fact, I have a total cost analysis presentation that's actually called The Cost of Waiting. And we're sending that out to a lot of our clients right now, because what it does show is exactly that, what the house would cost if they purchased a home now. So, for example, we start with a $500,000 purchase price now in spring at 3.25% average rate for a $2,600 payment a month. Let's say they wait till fall and prices go up to $550 and the rates go up to 4.25%. Now they're at $3,150 a month. So their payment just went up $400 and $500 a month. And then let's say they wait till next year, prices may go up even more to $600, and rates might climb a little bit more before, like they were before COVID. Now at 4.5%, they're looking at, $3,200 to $3,400 a month. So just in a matter of a year, if they do wait, then they could be looking at not only more out of pocket, but a lot of people's concern is, what if I pay over value and there's a bubble? Okay, well, first of all, we're not seeing a bubble because the demand is far outweighing the inventory. And so to have a bubble, you would need to shift in market. And we have so much equity in our market right now. If someone got into trouble, they would just sell the house. But as far as the paying over value, we look at that and we say, okay, even in the worst markets with the crash, when people bought at the highest and they stayed in their homes for 5 years, they still came out ahead equity-wise. And then if you calculate that in the cost of renting, in addition to that, the answer becomes clear. It's still a good time to buy, even if you are paying over asking or even a little bit over value.
One of the big advantages we don't talk about much, and I'm not an accountant, but you should call one, is that interest is deductible. Now, when you're paying rent, you're not going to get that. And if you amortize, which means prepaid interest over a 30-year period, you're going to be paying a lot of interest in the beginning, no matter what your rate is. Well, you can stack all that as a deduction, which also helps, at the end of the year if you're a W-2 employer. Now, one of the things that you mentioned was the difference between the crash and now. I mean, there's two major differences as I see it. One, it was artificial in the fact that nobody qualified towards the end there with stated income loans. Everybody that had a pulse could basically get a loan. Well, we're not there now. We have to qualify. So people that are borrowing money are qualifying. The stated income world is no longer, right? So that's one major difference. But you made a point that is real, and that is back in 2004 to 2006, the Federal Reserve raised the Fed rate 16 times, I believe. Now, we don't have to look back that far to see rates jump. I mean, I think it was in 2019 we saw a 5%, almost 5% spike, and then it went back down. So this can happen. I mean, when your federal fund rate's at 0 and you're at 3%, 3.25%, going down is probably not going to happen. But going up over a period of time probably will. So maybe now's the time. Even if you have to swallow a little bit of pride and pay a little extra money, I think you're going to be safer in the long run, in my opinion. And I agree that the other final factor is that COVID allows people to now work from home. Basically, that forced adoption of employers saying to their employees, you can now live in Lake Chelan or Leavenworth or Wenatchee, and we'll pay you the same amount of money you used to have to live in Puget Sound to make. Think about this. That unlocks 4.2 million people. Now, they're not all going to do it, of course, and it's not all a good thing. But I think demand's going to be around for a while. We have a pretty cool place to live. So anyway, hey, we're coming to the end of the segment, and I, as always, am very grateful for your time and insight. Give Prime Lending a call. You can get a hold of Sharon at 425-327-1451 on her cell phone, or go to her website, yourstorybeginshere.net. Thanks, Sharon.
Yes, thank you, Russ.
Have a great day.
You too.
It's a bright new day, just came my way. I bought a new home, yeah, home, sweet home, oh, home, sweet home. Keller Williams, I love my dream home. Yeah, I love my dream home. Home, sweet home.